that would just get together constantly, in addition to the day-to-day of the work. And when COVID happened, we really, we lost that because there's only so much you can do on Zoom, and we tried really hard. We used to do monthly all hands meetings as a company, and we moved it to weekly because we felt that we needed to actually do more to keep people connected to the business during COVID at a time when they weren't all together, they weren't in the office. And so we had weekly all hands meetings. We came up with a wide variety of social events that we can do virtually to keep people engaged. We did an activity, we call it Soundtrack to the Life, where 12 employees would pick a song that means a lot to them, and they would share it with the whole company over the course of an hour. So we try to really bring some fun and interesting events to our team virtually. We did a virtual holiday party. We did a virtual company kickoff meeting. And I think those things worked reasonably well. But I think one of my key takeaways during the last year and a half is that there's only so much you can do virtually until people just get Zoom fatigue. And so we realize we have to, at some level, work our way back to in-person over time. And I think that's going to be something over the next 12 months, getting people back into the office, getting people, together more often. Because if you're not together physically, I think it's very hard to keep that strong culture alive.
No, it's very true. I remember during the pandemic, and by the way, I hope many of you are taking notes here. There are routines and rituals that you can start, some new rituals, and carry into the new year. And one of the things that I did early on in the pandemic is for the CMO members who live in the Washington, D.C. metro area, we met in person, warm and, covered up with our big warm jackets, and we went hiking. And we call them the walkabouts. And we still met, but we had lots of physical distancing to ward off those nasty COVID viruses. But it worked really well at keeping the group engaged. We also did what you did, Jeff, is we took our 6 meetings a year, which used to be all in person, and we moved them to monthly meetings on Zoom, and brought some of the world's top leaders, CEOs, and experts in on Zoom meetings. And it was a really good way to keep people connected. So we have to be creative. What aspects of your mindset have changed since you made the leap from CMO to first-time CEO, Jeff?
A lot of people ask me this question, and I think the answer I have is usually unsatisfying for some, because my mindset generally hasn't changed that much, because I've always been very focused not just on one function of the company or running marketing. Obviously, that's part of my job, but I've always been focused much more on the broader business. And a lot of people say, like, how did you become the CEO? That's usually that's uncommon to have a marketing leader move into the CEO role. But when I try to unpack it for people, it usually has to do with the fact that, yes, I was the CMO in title, but I had a very broad portfolio of work and responsibility for the business. And I had a very close relationship with the CEO of the company. And over time, I kind of evolved to become his right-hand man, I guess. And so as things started to change in the business and opportunities came about, he always looked at me and said, Jeff, why don't you take on this project, or why don't you take on this assignment? So while I started as the head of marketing here, I later took on product. So then I was running marketing and product. I later took on technology when our CTO left. Now that was an interim job because I had no intention of running the technology team. But I ran the technology team in an interim capacity for 6 months as we looked for our CTO. So
you had to bring out your inner geek.
yeah, well, that's never a problem because I wouldn't call it an inner geek. I'm a big geek, but um, I've always taken a very broad view of the business and the impact I could have on the business beyond just whatever function I'm in. I am the classic person that does not stay in their lane. I want to really understand all the different parts of the business. I work as the CMO. I work very closely with the CFO. I work very closely with our ops people. I do things that oftentimes people are traditional marketers are confused by. Why would you want to spend so much time with the CFO, Jeff? I was like, well, as the CFO controls the budgets, and if I want more budget, I got to really have a strong relationship with the CFO, so the CFO understands what I'm doing and the impact it has on the business. So I think overall, as I have matured as a business person, as an executive, I just kept doing more and more and taking on more responsibility. And then when John Ziegler, our previous CEO, decided to move on to a new opportunity, they looked across the business and they said, well, Jeff's running product marketing technology. He's running essentially 75% of the business at this point. It probably makes sense to give him the chance to be the CEO. And so that's how I ended up taking on that role. I think the other thing that kind of went in my favor as far as me taking over the CEO, our business is in a very good place. We have a very well-defined strategy. We know what we're doing. We know where we're going. And sometimes when you bring in a new CEO, they have their own ideas and their own plan, and they want to bring in their own team, and they would potentially interrupt what is a company that's very successful, very fast growing, and on a very good path. And so I think our new owners looked at the business and they said it makes a lot more sense to stay with the team that's got us here than to shake things up and bring in someone from the outside.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So you were moving along in a positive direction, and the company was not ripe for complete disruption. Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. By the way, we have a question from Crystal, who couldn't join us today by video, but she asked, could she ask us a question? She wants to know, she's the CMO of Fiscal Note. She says, what are your top recommendations that marketing leaders should think about in terms of attracting new talent when you and I both know, Jeff, there are over 11 million open jobs in the United States right now?
Yeah. So the way I think about recruiting and attracting top talent to your organization has everything to do with your ability to build and foster a strong peer network for yourself. So I write a lot about this in the book, actually, and I think one of the real differentiators I've had in my career is that I've constantly been able to bring in really good people onto my teams, because we both know, Lisa, I can only take a company so far. I need the team to really take us to where we need to get to. You're really only going to be as strong as the people that you bring in around you as a leader. So I think being able to build the best team is critical to your success as a marketing leader. Now, how do you build the best team? Building the best team is something that takes a lot of time and effort in building your network. One of the things I think I really invested in early on in my career is trying to build a network of peers who could help me find top talent, and I could help them find top talent. So I spend a ton of time having lunches and drinks and coffees, and in a COVID world, sometimes just Zoom chats with marketing leaders and other executives that are in the Atlanta area. And I do that because I really want to get to know the people, because the more people I know, the more people I could bounce ideas off of, or help me get ideas on how I could solve certain problems. But it also creates a great way for you to recruit talent. And so when I came to Park Mobile to run marketing, it was a bit of a reset. We needed to move some people out. We needed to bring all new people in. We were going to build out the team, add some heads.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to mention that you didn't spend a lot of time ruminating on that. I mean, you took action pretty quickly. a lot of companies during COVID did not take action. They waited a long time, months and months, before they reassign people or let some people go. Was it hard for you to make those tough choices and cut back on headcount like that?
Um, no, because we had to do it for the business. We had to make tough decisions. If a couple examples. During COVID, there were no trade shows, and I have a person on my team that just does trade shows. And so, what do I do with that person? Well, I could try to find some other busy work for them to do, but there were needs in other teams in the organization that were understaffed and couldn't get new headcount. And so we said, well, here's a talented person on the marketing team. Let's have this person go over to the operations team for a couple months or longer. We'd like to get them back to marketing eventually, but we sent them over to a team that needed help when we really didn't have a lot of work for that person to do. And so that was really important. And we made a fair amount of cuts during COVID to the marketing budget and the marketing team, because our goal as a business was to try to get through COVID without laying off our employees. That was very important to us. The executives took a pay cut, but with revenue being down, the only lever we had to pull was reducing expenses. So what did we do? I went to every vendor that we were working with. I asked for either, a discount, or if we could get out of a contract, or push a payment down the road. We looked at our team and said, okay, maybe we don't need these people, but we offered people other opportunities in the company so we can try to keep them. And some people took it and some people didn't, and they ended up leaving the business.
Well,
but we gave those opportunities to people.
The good news is that a very large number of your people are based in Atlanta. Am I correct?
Correct. Yes.
So Atlanta's had quite a renaissance, an economic renaissance, and has a pretty diversified economy. So they were probably able to land somewhere else where their value was needed immediately, which is always a very encouraging thing. I also want to touch on the network comment you made earlier. I was very pleasantly surprised to see the myriad resources you put in your book, How Not to Suck at Marketing. I was just minding my own business and reading, and all of a sudden I went, hey, wait a minute, my name is in here. I'm on page 194. And it was a positive comment. That's always, a pleasant surprise based on what you know about me. So I see that your evolution as a leader came from your willingness to invest time in helping others and helping. When I built the first CMO peer group in Atlanta, and you were there to help me build that and fortify it. And now with, thanks to people like you and the pandemic, we are now nationwide. So, serendipity happens when you really look at the 3 keys to longevity. You master at least 2 of them that I know of. I mean, one is that there are 3 that scientists have found. One is our wellness, mental, physical, and spiritual. And number 2 is our community. And you, I think, are masterful at building community. And the 3rd is having a purpose, whether that purpose is a personal one, as in I want to build a loving and healthy family, or whether it's to have a purpose through your company that helps you get out of bed in the morning and be ready for whatever comes your way. So those are 3 key things that I have to remind people of from time to time, because we can certainly forget them when we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah. And those are really 3 great things. And I like how you frame them up. It makes it very simple and understandable. Because I think if you're doing those 3 things consistently, you're going to feel pretty good and you're going to be pretty happy. And so it's an important thing. I think for me, when I think about your point around community, especially, I think that aligns also with purpose, because what I like to do, I like to donate a lot of my time into helping other people, right? Whether it's mentoring maybe junior level and mid-level marketers, whether it's volunteering with organizations like Techstars that mentor startup companies. I always love doing that. I mean, a lot of times people just connect me with people. Hey, will you talk to this person? They're considering. I just talked to someone today. Should my daughter go get an MBA? She just graduated undergrad. Should she get an MBA? I was like, well, have her give me a call. I'm happy to chat with her about that. But I love talking to people, trying to help if I can, give advice, because then I expect people to do the same with me. So when I'm struggling, when I'm trying to figure something out, or when I'm trying to hire someone really good, I'll go to those people and they'll always help me. And one thing I'm really proud of at Park Mobile is that the team we've built there, the marketing team we've built there, it's almost 100% sourced through either my network or a network of people that are adjacent to me. And so we haven't had to go out and get all these recruiters looking for people. We've built the team by asking people who are good people that we should be looking at. And those people have referred really good people in that have become, rock stars within our organization.
Yes, it is very true. It's a heck of a lot easier to have pre-vetted, pre-screened, talented people come your way versus trolling for people on LinkedIn or Indeed. No offense to LinkedIn or Indeed, but it's so much better to do it that way.
Or paying really high recruiter fees. And I have a lot of friends who are recruiters, and they do a great job. But it's expensive if you're going to keep using recruiters to build your bench. That's going to cost a lot of money to the business. And so I'm very happy we're able to get in really strong talent without going out and incurring so much expense to the business. That's something that I'm really proud of. And I also think that people who are referred when they start, I almost think they're a bit more motivated because someone who's in their network kind of put their neck out and said, hey, take a look at this person. I think they're really good. And so I found that the referrals, they really come in a lot more motivated, I think, to make an impact and to show that they deserve to be here.
Absolutely. And speaking of deserving to be here, we want to thank our sponsor, Marvia, for helping support this show, The Mindful Marketer. Let's take a pause and hear from our sponsor. Thank you, Marvia. Jeff, one of the other things that we have discovered now, I've advised and worked with over 160 CMOs since we started our community marketing growth leaders. And one of the things that really stands out to me is what has not changed as a result of COVID. What has not changed? What has not changed is that a lot of great marketers do a stellar job at promoting their employer's brand and creating the growth engine and winning awards. But if you go to their LinkedIn profile, their own brand is anemic at best. You have taken a very different stance than 90% of the CMOs I have met over time. At what stage of your long career did you wake up and say, I've got to also have my own worldview and build my own brand platform?
So I did it more out of professional necessity, I think, than having a real plan that I wanted to build a strong personal brand. But what I found was I was at a company called Auto Trader, and I was there for 5 years. And I had what I thought was a really good run there. But I got to the point where, I started there as a marketing manager, and then 5 years later, I was still a marketing manager, and I realized that there was no route up for me in the organization, and so a lot of times, if you can't move up, you have to move out. Now, the challenge I was having is that after 5 years at AutoTrader, as a marketing manager, I was making a pretty good salary, and I was well above market for most marketing managers. But I didn't have that coveted, VP title, so I couldn't go to market and try to get a VP of marketing job because I was a marketing manager, and then I couldn't go and get a marketing manager job because I was making too much money as a marketing manager at AutoTrader.
Oh,
And so I
boy.
was in this horrible catch-22 where I just like, well, what do I do now? I guess I just stay at AutoTrader as the mid-level manager my whole career, and I just forego any aspirations I had of becoming a CMO one day. And what I realized through the process is that I was letting everybody else define me, and I was doing a horrible job defining myself. I did an exercise that I think is a great thing to do for anyone who wants to be a marketing leader, where I spent like an afternoon looking at job descriptions on LinkedIn and Indeed of CMOs. And I said, what do all these CMO job descriptions have in common? And you look, and there's probably like 5 things that are constant between every single CMO job description. It's,
I
you
know.
know, you know,
I saw those in here, and I highlighted those 5. You looked at over 100 job descriptions for CMOs to come up with your top 5 list.
yeah. But when you look at it, when I looked at that, then I looked at my career and things I had done. I checked every box. I had done all these things, and I had great stories that I could tell about, how I've built a brand and how I use data and how I've communicated effectively to executives and all the things that are critical for a successful CMO I had done. And so I said, well, the problem isn't that I haven't done the things that would get me to a CMO. The problem is that nobody knows. And how is anyone going to know? Because it's just bullet points buried on my resume. And so I said, I have to do a better job building my personal brand and positioning myself as a marketing executive. And if I
Hold that
don't,
thought.
yeah,
Hold that thought, Jeff. I'd love this to be a transition moment for us. Now that we live in this hybrid world, what are 2 or 3 things that every marketer can do next year to elevate their brand and be able to shape their own story versus letting someone else do it for them?
I would say there are 2 things. One is figuring out forums where you can actually tell your story. Um, uh, One thing I found to be very effective in building my personal brand was starting my own blog and starting to write about some of the things I was doing from a marketing perspective, and then going to conferences and then continuing to tell that story in front of a live audience. So really, like I said, burying good stuff in bullet points on a resume is not going to do much for you. But being able to get in front of an audience or write a blog post about an effective campaign that you did, or how you built a team and what your strategies are there, those are the things that are going to get attention and are going to position your personal brand. So that's number one. And number 2, and this is something I wrote a whole chapter on in the book because I think it is so important. Um, Getting your LinkedIn profile, and I always tell people, if your LinkedIn profile looks like your resume, you are doing it wrong. Okay.
Oof. Yeah.
LinkedIn is a virtual portfolio for you to show what you can bring to a business. Right. And it drives me nuts, actually, if a recruiter ever calls me and says, oh, just can you send me your resume? I was like, well, go look at my LinkedIn. That's a lot more interesting than my resume. They're like, well, I need your resume though. I was like, no, but you have to understand, if a prospective employer wants to hire me, my LinkedIn has everything they would ever need to see to show that like I'm someone they may want to consider for the role. My resume doesn't. And like,
Very
so the
well
way
said.
the way I build my LinkedIn profile, and it gives you all the tools. It's a virtual portfolio. I could show I could show my thought leadership. I could show work product. I could show campaigns I've worked on, videos I've done. You could really show everything you've done in one place. And getting the mindset that LinkedIn is not your virtual resume, it's your virtual portfolio, and building it that way is so critical for any marketing leader. So I wrote a whole chapter about what I think is a good LinkedIn profile in the book. So, and it's actually on, I think I posted it on hownottosuckatmarketing.com, my website. So I would take a look at that, then look at your LinkedIn profile and see if you're doing it right. And if you're not doing it right, start thinking about how do I turn my LinkedIn profile into something that positions my personal brand? And marketers
Thank
should be able
you.
to do this very well because this is our
Yes.
profession, right?
Oh my goodness. Yes, this is one of those mic drop moments I hope everyone remembers for sure. Jeff, it has been such a delight to see you again in your new role. And I know there'll be many other ways we can collaborate in the future. And I really hope you'll come back and visit us next year as we design the next stage of our company's growth. I see nothing but bright skies ahead for you, Jeff. And I'll think of you every time I'm using my Park Mobile app.
Thanks, Lisa. It's great to see you, and happy holidays.
Oh, the same to you. Lisa Norell here. We have been talking with Jeff Perkins, the author of his first book, How Not to Suck at Marketing. And I want to use this time now for our mindful moments. We always have the mindful moments and look back at what we discussed today with our 3 biggest takeaways. The first takeaway that I suggest from this, my mindful moment, is around the power of being in person. One of the things that Jeff brought up that also is punctuated by my most successful CMOs is that we need to create safe workarounds to see our people. If it means you stand outside and go on a walk, or it means you have small, safe gatherings, don't wait. Don't hide in your house. It is very scary to do that, and it could have a deleterious impact on your culture. The second mindful moment takeaway is that, don't get too comfortable in your swim lane. What I like about Jeff is he stepped forward with the CEOs, with John and with his prior CEO, Dave Kyle, and he raised his hand. He raised his hand and said, how can I help? Can I be an interim chief of product officer or chief technology officer? He didn't wait for someone to ask him. He was proactive about it. So where can you step forward? One of the worst things you can do as a marketing leader is become so good at what you do at the expense of everything else that you become pigeonholed as the demand gen expert or the branding expert, and you limit your possibilities for growth. Number 3 is to create your virtual portfolio. Look at your LinkedIn profile tomorrow or over the holidays when you have a little free time and say, is this resume regurgitation, or is this really a virtual portfolio of my worldview and the value I bring to my organizations? This is a great time to review and revise it and tell a story. Don't make it sound like resume regurgitation. Okay, with all those 3 mindful moments, let me tell you what's coming up. Our final live stream of 2021 will not disappoint. We're going to be joined by Gary Ware, who runs a company called Creative Play. And we're not going to sit back and create spreadsheets, analysis, or talk about strategic planning. We're going to talk about how he has helped hundreds and hundreds of companies create this creative play strategy to really infuse innovation in a time of COVID. So don't miss December 17th with my friend Gary Ware from San Diego, California. Bring your most playful questions and let's celebrate the end of 2021 together. I will see you then.